Hello everyone, I'm David Marler and welcome to this introductory lesson to the writing course that you're going to be taking here for Literature 3.2 or Literature Verdieping 3. This course is going to be based on the exam and what you can expect from the course in general. So, if everything is correct, if you're a full-time student, you've already signed up for your 6 modules and you possibly have already started class. If not, make sure to contact me so that I can help you sign up for your classes. And for the part-time course, of course, the part-time students, everything will be taken care of for you. So let's start this class by talking about a few aspects of what we're going to go over. So we're going to start off with the lesson goals. We're going to talk about how you can complete this online course, what homework you're going to have, what the exam will look like, the rubric, and of course your homework for next class. So this is an online writing course, and after completing this course, you will get a certificate. The course will have 6 lessons. This lesson 1, is going to be about the exam. So, for instance, what the course looks like and how it's going to be graded. You're then going to have some homework, and then once you have completed your homework, lesson 2 will open up for you. That is how to tackle the question. Then you will have lesson 3, which is writing an introduction. Lesson 4, the body paragraphs. Lesson 5, your conclusion. And lesson 6 is, of course, how to prepare for the exam. So, the homework for this class is going to be very similar, except for it's a little different because the teacher will not be grading it. We will, of course, be keeping your progress, keeping an eye on your progress, but it's very important to remember that it is your job and your job alone to do the homework. And if you haven't completed all of the assignments for this writing class, your grade, your essay will not be graded because you will have to turn in a certificate that you will get once completing it. So like every course, this writing module will have homework. This will be given at the end of each video. In order to go on to the next module, you'll have to complete this homework. It'll be randomly checked by a teacher. You can follow this course at your own leisure. You just have to make sure that you have it completed before the exam, and you cannot take the exam until you have completed the course. Now, in order to take the exam, a student must complete 6 modules, as you know, 3 contemporary, 2 from the English language canon, and 1 young adult lit, and complete this writing module. That means 7 modules in total. You'll submit proof of completion of your 5 writing modules and this of your reading modules and this writing module towards the end. Otherwise, you will not be receiving a grade. So, let's look really quickly at the exam. Now, the exam is very simple. It is 1 5-paragraph essay. You're going to get 3 questions, and you only have to answer 1 of them. And it is always going to ask you to compare or contrast 2 novels that you have read this year for this course. Now, if you're a second-year student and you're fast-tracking and you possibly begin in Block 3 or Block 4, don't worry. It can be any of the 6 works that you read for this course. You're going to use the writing skills that you've learned in this online module, and you're going to see later when we describe the rubric that if you don't use the skills that we teach you in this module, you will not be able to pass the exam because one of the criteria is that you actually have incorporated the writing skills that we have taught you. Now, the exam is very simple. It's a very normal HR exam. You'll have 90 minutes to complete the exam, 120 minutes for students met in beperking. There is no set word count, but most students will write between 500 and 750 words. Now, a lot of students wish that we did have a word count, but our experience shows that when we give you a word count, a student will sometimes write 480 fantastic words, very concise, but very good. And then they'll be 20 words short, and then we will get 20 words, which will completely ruin their essay, and that causes them to get a lower grade. So it has to be 5 full paragraphs, and once you've completed this, you're going to understand that an introduction paragraph has 4 to 5 sentences, that a body paragraph has the same, let's say 5 to 6 sentences, and your conclusion at least has 3. So, you are not able to use any materials on the exams. So there will be no books, no ebooks. The only thing that you will be allowed to have and to bring is a pen or pencil, and you will be supplied with scrap paper. All of the exams are going to be digital. which means that you will need your own laptop. And if you do not have a laptop, make sure to contact us beforehand so that we can make sure that there is one available for you. Now, your English has to be for year 3 students at C2 level. If it's not at C2 level, then that means that we will be asking that you will not get the full amount of points for criterion 4, which is writing. And you can assume, and this is the most important, that the examiner has read the novels. This is about literary analysis. This is not a book report. What a lot of students do, and it's important to remember that we do not accept this in year 3, is that they start an essay with telling us what happened in the book. You are going to have, in each of your modules, you'll be in groups with a teacher. You'll spend 3 weeks on a book and you're going to read it slowly. So if you're not a quick reader, it's not like previous courses where you have to have it read for one class. You're going to spend 3 weeks on one book. We assume that you've read the book, and your module teachers will be testing that. And if you don't read the book, then it counts as an absence. So it's important to remember that we know that you've read the book. So here, when you're writing this essay, we're really going deeper than you telling us what you read and what happened. Now, we're going to start looking at the rubric right now because that's what the homework for this week is based on. And the rubric is going to be one rubric for all of the literature courses in the English department. So unlike previous years, this rubric is based on levels, and there are 4 levels. There is 0 points or level 0. That means that you have not met first year level requirements. So let's say that you write an essay and you make huge English errors. That means that your level is not at C1, which is the required first year level. That means that you'll get 0 points. Now, level 1 is the first year level. This is, for instance, if you write a book report, you're going to be getting points for a level 1 student because a first year student, we expect their essays to be more book reportish. Whereas level 2, which is the third year level, this is where we expect you, and if you get 2 points, so level 2 on all 4 criteria, then you'll of course get a 5.5. Level 3 means that you have a good understanding of literature and you have a good understanding of the text, you're a good writer, and if you get to level 3, you'll, on all of the criteria, you're going to get an 8. And level 4 is excellent understanding of literature. This is really for students who think deep, who know a lot, and who write perfectly. Not necessarily perfectly, because you can make some mistakes. We'll talk about that in a second. So a major difference from previous school years is that from school year 2025-2026, you can compensate failing one criterion by scoring high on another. So that means that let's say that with response to the question, you're at a third year level. Knowledge of the text, you're actually at level 3 because you know the text in and out. You give really good detailed examples. You have for knowledge of literature, you have level 2, but your English is at level 1 because you wrote it at C1. That still means that you'll get a 5.5 because even though you failed one of the criteria by writing at C1, which is first year level, you still in total have reached the minimum amount of points for a first year or for a third year student, which is 8 points. As long as you get the 8 points, you pass. Okay, let's have a real quick look at the rubric. I want to start with the rubric in general. What does it look like? Well, the rubric is graded on 4 different criteria. Criterion 1 is response to the question. This is essentially how did you answer the question. Criterion 2 is knowledge of the text, that is, of the 2 texts that you're writing about, how well do you know them? Question 3 is knowledge of literature. This is how well do you know the literature of the text? And of course, remember, the questions are going to make sure that you're asked to answer stuff about this. And the final criterion is your writing skills, your general ability to write an academic essay. So we're going to look really quickly at the first one. Now, the first one that we have here is response to the question. And in each of these here, you can see that there are 4 bands. So each band, the yellow band represents a pass in year 1. The green band represents a pass in year 2. The blue band is a good, and the purple band is an excellent. So let's see here what we expect from year 1 students and from year 3 students. So from year 1, if you answer the question and you generally answer it, but some of your parts maybe go off topic and sometimes it looks a little too much like a book report, then you'll get 1 point. And you can see here that under each parts of the rubric, there's a little explanation that kind of shows and kind of describes an example essay. So in this one, we would say the student retells the plot and includes basic character observations, but doesn't explore any deeper meaning or connect ideas to the question. Now, for 2 points, which is a pass in year 3, this means that the student has demonstrated basic understanding of the question, so they've answered the question, and the analysis goes beyond surface level. So they're not just talking about the broad aspects of the book. And each part of the question is addressed, though sometimes unevenly. So if you're asked to do 2 things in the question, you've done one really well, but one you've kind of, you really haven't discussed enough. So an example of this is that the student identifies key themes and connects them to the question, but the analysis may be brief or it lacks complexity. For example, they note that a character feels isolated, but they don't really discuss that any further. They don't talk what that means for the reader or what that says about the society that it was written in. Now, a student who gets good, which is 3 points, this means that the response shows a solid understanding of the question, including some of its subtleties. The answer is consistently relevant and critical, with thoughtful engagement with the text and its effects. So in this case, if we look at the curious incident in the dog in the nighttime, the student explores how a text critiques social norms and discusses how language or structure contribute to that meaning. For instance, they talk about how Christopher in the curious incident is an unreliable narrator because he lives with autism, and that this may challenge the reader's assumptions about what truth means. So when you're reading the book, the reader understands that what Christopher says and the way that Christopher interprets events like his mom leaving as being different. And we know that. So that means that we know that the person who's writing this story is not necessarily someone that we can rely on for truth. And if someone, for instance, goes further and wants to get 4 points, this means that they demonstrate deep understanding of the question and its nuances. So they've answered it completely and they've been focused. They've been critical. And when I use the word critical, we mean that here. Critical means your ability to kind of go deep into the question and to think more than on the surface. And you're often insightful. So you give us information that thinks, oh, that's a clever way of thinking about it. So an example here is that the student weaves together analysis of theme, form, and context to address the question fully. So an example is a response about conformity versus individuality, that you explore how narrative structure of a story or character development and symbolism all contribute to a critique of societal expectations. Now, if we look at the next one that we have here, we have knowledge of the text. Criterion 2 is how well do you know about the text that you're writing about? So for instance, a first-year student, the student knows a general understanding of the text, but you don't have a lot of context. So you can tell me what happened in the story, but you don't really tell me about what it means. So an example of that is that you describe events from the novel, but you don't explain why they're important. For example, you mention that Christopher finds the dog dead, but you don't explore how this triggers him and how this kind of begins this kind of exploration of truth or trust. An example for a student in year 3, in the green column there, we can see that this student demonstrates satisfactory understanding of the text. So you've done what the first year students have done, and you've made connections between text and meaning, context, but you won't always that detailed in what you did. So for instance here, you'll discuss Christopher's difficulty with emotions and you connect his isolation, but you don't fully explore what that means. You don't really go in depth. Now, for a student who's wanting a good, this means that the student demonstrates solid knowledge and offers relevant analysis that connects meaning to context or reader impact. So, an example is that a student analyzes how Christopher's literal way of thinking shapes the narrative style and reflects a different way of seeing the world, linking this to his neurodivergent perspectives, challenge societal norms. So, in this part right here, the student has gone deeper. They've not only told us a little bit about the text and the deeper meaning, but they also say that the book, for instance, is a way for the reader to better engage and understand what it's like to have someone who, to be someone with his form of autism, Asperger's syndrome. And finally, a student who gets an excellent score, really, this student is getting a 10. This student demonstrates deep and insightful knowledge of the text. So context, meaning, and textual detail are kind of woven together in a persuasive analysis. So this student discusses how the novel's structure mimics mathematical logic, reflecting Christopher's worldview, and connects this to broader questions about order, chaos, and the limits of rationality and understanding human emotion. Now, the next criterion that we have is knowledge of literature. And this is not just your knowledge of the text, but this is kind of your knowledge of a lot of the terms that you're going to learn in the course. So a first-year student has discussed literary terms and tropes, possibly one or two, but it was very vague. Possibly they didn't understand it completely. So an example of this is if you discuss if the bell jar is part of the young adult literature genre. So you can say, well, I think that it's part of the young adult literature genre because it is written for someone who is 18, 19 years old. A third-year student should go a lot deeper. So you've discussed literary terms, or literary devices, terms, and tropes, and have done so adequately. So you actually have understanding of what you're talking about. So for instance, in your essay, you would discuss about how symbolism is used in the bell jar to influence the reader's experience. A student who's getting a good in the blue column, this is someone who has knowledge of literary devices, terms, and tropes, and has done this correctly and has linked it to specific instances in the book. So this student is going really in deep. They're not just discussing symbolism, but they're discussing a specific symbol. So for instance, how the fig tree in the bell jar is a symbol of Esther's indecision. And finally, the student who's getting a 10, they do everything that the good student does, but they go into so much detail that they show that they have a really deep understanding of the book. So here they discuss not only the fig tree as a symbol of indecision in Esther's life, but the main character watches as the figs rot, and this is foreshadowing her own decisions in the story. So they're making a link here, not just to how the fig tree is a symbol of indecision, but they say that the fig tree is also something that shows us this foreshadowing, the choices that Esther's going to make later in the story. Now, our final criterion is writing skills, and this one is actually quite easy to understand. And for first-year students, it's going to be slightly complicated because you may not know the CEFR levels yet. But in year one, what we expect is that you've written a 5-paragraph essay and that it's at C1 level, which means that you have an introduction, you have 3 body paragraphs, and you have a conclusion. You have to have this, otherwise you will not get the 1 point here. For students in year 3, what we expect is that you've written your essay at C2 level and that you have used most, but not necessarily all, of the techniques taught in the online writing class. So that means that you've used maybe hook focus thesis and a TTEB for the body paragraphs, but you didn't really do everything that you were expected in the closing. And in that case, you would get 2 points, which is a pass. Now, a student who's getting a good has written it at C2, you've communicated effectively, you've been flexible with your language and precise, well-organized, engaging. You've made some mistakes in the essay, we all do, and you have used all of the techniques in class. Now, a student who's getting a 10, who's getting really in this purple column, this is a student who's once again written it at C2 and has really written an essay that's extremely clear, it's insightful, it's highly structured and polished, which means it's kind of difficult for me to find errors. You are allowed to make a few errors in this, but if you do, it means that it really doesn't affect the reading of it. And this means that this is an essay that is sophisticated, it communicates complex ideas convincingly, it's easy for the examiner to read, and you've used all of the techniques taught in this class. So these are the basic criteria and the way that we're going to grade the essays. Okay, let's discuss the homework for next class. What you're going to do right now is you're going to complete a quiz that you're going to see based on students' writings and the essay, and you're, of course, going to see your first essay style question. And you're going to see some examples, and your job is to play the role of the literature teacher and grade it. see what the student grades. So there are going to be questions on this, and remember that you must get 80% in order to move on to the next module in this writing course. Thank you. Have a great day.